Shalom, everybody, and welcome to my next video in the Paleo-Hebrew breakdown of our modern alphabet, how we come to get to where we are, and hope everybody's doing well. First of all, I'd like to give all praise to the Most High, and hope everybody's doing well. So what we'll do now, we'll start where we normally start, which is over here. This is the modern day G that we're familiar with, that's used for good and also for bad things, as we know. Going back in time a little bit, we have the Hebrew modern version of the gamal. Then we have the Roman version, which somehow kind of resembles our G that we're familiar with today. It was also written early on as a form of it's also similar to a C, really. That's probably caused a bit of confusion over time. Then we have the Greek gamma, which is this one here. Now this is where it gets sort of back to its early origin, really. You have the late version here, which is a bit more elaborate, ornate. As you go back in time, obviously things weren't as elaborate. They were just basically written down in a fairly sort of standard, quick sort of use of instruments and things like that. So that's the Greek one. Sumerian one is pretty similar to the Greek. What you have to remember, back in these sort of times, the Mediterranean, as we know it now, was used fairly widespread as a source of trade routes. So one letter sort of spread its way round the whole coastline of the Mediterranean and kind of become used by the local inhabitants and people of the places where the trade ships stopped at. And as we spoke of before, this is the Nabatean Aramaic version, the Palmyrian Aramaic version, which you can see over time it sort of basically looked the same, but somehow kind of got abbreviated a bit, and everybody's version of it was slightly different. Nobody could get an exact match, but the whole idea here is to show you how we got from where we are now to where it actually came from. So heading back here, we have now the Moabite one, which is slightly resembles the Lamed of the Paleo-Hebrew, if you kind of give it a complete reversal from like a mirror image top to bottom. The Phoenician is next. As you can see, it sort of changed from sort of 500 before Saviour. As you can see, I've changed. I don't like to use the word Christ because that gets you into all sorts of conflicts and discussions and debates and everything. So I thought I'll go with a fairly middle of the road statement, which is Saviour, because basically that's what we're dealing with, is our Saviour. So I put before S, which is the meaning of that is before Saviour. So this one is about 1,000 before the Saviour. This one is about 1,500 years before the Saviour. I've tried to keep them all in sort of corresponding timelines, but you get the general idea anyway. This is the latest version of that letter symbol, if you like, and the higher ones up here are the earlier ones. Going back here, you've got the Canaanite one, which is fairly similar to the Phoenician one, also similar to the Paleo-Hebrew, ancient Semitic one. And you can see here, they kind of rotate. And I don't know what this is done for. It's maybe because, I mean, if you look at the way some children write and some adults write, they kind of switch the paper around at sort of a funny angle to kind of write things down. So maybe this is how it sort of kind of got switched round. Nobody knows for sure, but basically it's the same symbol, but it kind of revolves around on the actual thing that they were putting it down on. This one here at the top here is more of a sort of a block form type of inscription. It's basically the same thing, but then again, you know, everybody did the same letter but slightly different with their own take on it. But as long as they knew what they were writing down and could make people understand who they wanted to make understand, that was all they were trying to do, really. So when we've got back to this point in time, the meaning of the thing was actually a leg and a foot, which you can see over here. I forgot to write Egyptian here, but this is this gap in the middle. This is the Hebrew side. This is the Egyptian side over to the left. So you can see the Egyptians, because they tended to do things a bit more elaborately, they would actually carve or draw or write an actual leg. Where the Paleo-Hebrew, the Hebrew Israelites, when they left Egypt, they didn't have time to write down these elaborate things, and probably they wanted to get away from elaborate things. They wanted to just go back to basics. You know, Moses and Aaron, that's why they brought everybody out of Egypt, because it was against what the Most High wanted. So to head over here to the Egyptian again, basically the leg, the Egyptian sounding word for that symbol is phonetically pronounced Geb, or Jeb, Geb, something like that, but it starts with a G. Now this one here is a G in the Hebrew, as we know. So as we go up, it can be either left facing or right facing, depending on what they were actually carving the symbol on or writing it on, really, basically. So it means the same thing as the simplified version, which they would have used maybe just writing down instructions or something. These ones here are more of the elaborate sort of, you know, what would be used on a monument or a stone carving. Sometimes they use these as well, but you know, they kind of like things pretty jazzed up, really. Also, you have here this symbol of two legs, which is pronounced Hep. The E is like just an added vowel in the middle of it, but hup, and it means to walk. This one here underneath, which is sort of like a bent leg in the process of sort of walking or actually moving. This one is more of a stationary symbol, but this one is it means sort of like actually moving. And as you can see, a couple of the meanings were run or flee, and that's basically the breakdown of the symbols back to the Hebrew and the Egyptian. Now, what I'd like to do is go into a bit more detail to find out how we got to that and some examples of that. So over here, if you can see here, now this one here this will give us the breakdown of how this leg symbol gained the G sound. This one here, this word is gehes. Gehes. So you have, to the left, you have this symbol here, which sort of resembles, when you sort of understand the meaning behind it, it resembles a pouch, like something that would, a bag that would hang from a belt. The line at the top is the belt line or string, you know, that went round your waist, and this is the pouch underneath. And that in Egyptian phonetic language was a G. This one next to it is a twisted cord, like a piece of string or rope that's twisted, and that has the sound H. Next one along is an S, which in Egyptian terms either meant folded cloth or again similar to a shepherd's crook, which is similar to the Hebrew version that came later. So that's the word gehes, which means to run, flee, come, go, return, or walk. This one under here is another version. There's actually about, I went through the book and I found about 30 different versions of walk or move or run. There's actually 30 different hieroglyphic groups of letters that mean those things. This one under here is Jesem, which then again we have the G, the S, and the M. And sometimes this M symbol is written as an M and has the M sound or the N sound. And it means to stride. And there's some different variations of what that actually looks like, because they kind of laid it out differently, but that's basically that group of symbols means that word there. Then we have get, which is the pouch again, which means to carry things. You know, you put things in a bag so you've got your hands free to walk. There's the hand, and there's the leg symbol again, the hip, which means to walk. This one next to it, down here, is mess, which also means to walk. The reason I've wrote these ones down is to kind of give you an understanding how they've got to to the GAM Hebrew word that we know as Gimel or Gamal or GAM. So this one here, the mess and the S and the leg symbol again and the walking hep symbol, altogether that mess sounding word meant to walk. Underneath here is another one, which is hep with the leg symbol, means to walk. Another one here, ap, which means to walk as well. It's quite confusing. This, when you get into it, it blows your mind sometimes. Then we have here a breakdown of geb, which remember was the name for the leg. So you have the symbol again for the leg, which gives us the B sound, because in the Egyptian language, it was a B. It had a phonetic sound and it had a visual sound, a visual meaning as well. So not only do you have, lots of meanings of the sounds of different hieroglyphic symbols, you have the sound meaning as well. So it gets quite involved, but hopefully I'm trying to get the message out here and you'll understand what I'm trying to say. You may have to watch this a couple of times. I'm probably going to watch it again to make sure I haven't done anything wrong. But you can see here the G represents the packet, a bag, a satchel, a bundle, and a pouch. So that gives us the geb sound for the leg symbol. This one here at the top is the M sign, the M Hebrew sign, and the Egyptian sign, which was an M or an N again. Underneath it has the owl symbol, which was a hieroglyph that had the phonetic sound of M. So this basically, the owl symbol is backing up the M sound of this symbol at the top, which, if you remember from before, means land or water or an area, a vast area of the surface of the Haaretz, the world, where we move around on. And so basically, this group of hieroglyphs use various different sounds and symbols to all give us the meaning of what they're describing, which is to walk, to move, to return, to go somewhere, to come back from somewhere. So here I've kind of got to the end of it and simplified it. So visually you have to carry, which is the G sound over here, phonetically a G, and then you have the M sound, which means to walk over here. And that gives us the GAM. So moving over to over here, we'll just briefly go through what we have. So we've got the G and the M, which means to gather, carry, walk, go. This is how the actual word is written in the Paleo Hebrew with the G symbol, the yod for the action of, remember this symbolizes actually moving your legs. This one if you remember, means the action, what you're actually doing, your bodily function. So moving on, this is the M sound again, which is the land. So you move your legs over the land, and the L at the end, which they kind of brought that in later on to give it the gamal sound of the word, where earlier on it was just basically GAM. The L means to lead. The lamed is the shepherd's crook, which means to lead. Underneath here we have the modern version, which is the modern Hebrew G, the Yod, the M, and the lamed. Underneath here I've given a couple of versions of the Hebrew, the Paleo-Hebrew for walk, which is lak. So here you have the shepherd's staff again, which what you have to remember is when you're walking, Moses, for example, walked with a staff. So as you walk with your legs, your body making you move across the land, you held the shepherd's staff with your hand. This K represents an open hand, you know, your hand, the palm of your hand. So you held the staff with the palm of your hand when you're walking, climbing, walking up a sand dune, walking across the riverside, walking through the town. You have to understand they didn't complicate things too much. They tried to keep things basic. These guys complicated things in the town just the same as they do now. Look at all the silly, stupid laws that we have, the official authoritative paperwork that we have to deal with. It's no different to what it was back then. I should imagine people's minds were blown back then with all the stuff that they were looking at that they didn't understand either. It was only the elites of the time back in Egypt that understood all this stuff, where the Hebrews kept things simple, basic, which is why they had to come out of this stuff. Here's another one, which is halak, and that means a journey. See, at the beginning here you have the H symbol, which means to praise or worship. So like under the guidance of who you hold, what governs your actions, what governs your head and your heart, what drives you. And then these two symbols, again, the L and the K, we've already spoke about. So basically, to summarize again, lak, halak, is the Paleo-Hebrew words for walk. And this one, the GAM, which gives us the meaning of the letter, is the word describing walk. So I hope somebody gets something from this. I'm sorry it's took me a while to get through it and finally get round to it again, but had a fair bit going on. So I've got a few more videos planned for later this week, hopefully. The next letter, and what I plan to do, if I can, is to actually start bringing out the word of the scriptures that I've translated into the Paleo-Hebrew. So I've got some starting in a few days' time, hopefully later this week. I'm going to try and present Shemut, which is Exodus, one sort of verse at a time, because, you know, it goes quite deep, and I know when we read things, we can read a verse in a couple of seconds, but it may take a few more minutes to describe what the actual meaning of that verse is. Also, I've got Bereshit, which I may start that one off as well. So running the two sort of concurrently, so I can basically just try and get some of this information out for you guys, so that, you know, you get a deeper understanding of the true word of the Most High. So that said, thanks for coming along, watching. I hope this all worked out all right, and I'll catch you guys later on. Take care and stay safe. Shalom.